Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Bobby Sen, and today we will be working on part 2 of my Valentino Perfume render in Blender. We're going to be adding a fluid simulation, so let's jump right into it. If you haven't seen part 1, that will be linked in the description box below, but today we are adding some fluid just to ramp up the scene, make it look a little bit more interesting. And like I mentioned in part 1, I am currently, and always, I don't know why I keep saying currently, but I am obsessed with fluid simulations. I think they're so cool, they're so fun to work with, and if you go a while without working in fluid simulations, you can kind of lose the steps in your mind. So I also wanted to just do a little bit of a refresher. So like I had mentioned in previous video, this is not necessarily a tutorial, so I don't want you to come into it thinking like that. This is more of a reference for me in the future, also a workflow video, and just something, if you do see something that might support you or help you in a project that you are working on, you are more than welcome to slow it down and kind of check out what I'm doing in the settings. I do hope one day to be good enough to feel confident enough to post up some tutorials. That is something that I'm hoping for in the very near future, but for now I am just kind of any little project that pops up in my head that I do think is going to support my growth as a Blender artist, I am just doing that. So that's what this is at the moment. I'm on a kick of modeling my favorite perfumes, and we did that in part 1. And this is more adding a fluid simulation into the scene because I just think it would just add a lot of elegance and dimension to the scene. So right now you'll see that I have already added my domain. I'm using a sphere as the flow object, and I have a couple collision objects. So the plane is a collision object, the bottle, I do believe the top, but I'm not even sure if I did it to the top because the water doesn't necessarily go up that far. But I added just a bunch of collision modifiers there, and I'm just kind of playing with the settings. So one thing that I learned when I'm working in the fluid simulations, and one of the things that I had to remind myself, again, I've done a few fluid simulations, but they are so far in between that at times you'll forget what it takes to make a good fluid simulation. So one of the things that I feel like I've beat into my head at this point is, have you ever gone to render one of your fluid simulations and the box is still in the scene, the domain is still in the scene, and I'm always like, oh my god, what is that? And I have to go back on the internet, scour the internet, and just remind myself of how to fix that. And the one thing if there's something you take away from this, and this is super beginner, but baking. Baking, and I always forget that is so important to bake. So I do know that you have to turn the setting to modular. You want to change the type setting to modular, and you do want to click the is resumable checkbox right underneath that cache where you pick your time frame in your domain settings. So that is something that I had to remind myself, and I had to restart the render a couple times actually because I hadn't pre-baked it. The good thing about baking it though, once you get all of your settings where you'd like them to be, is that it definitely runs a lot smoother. I do think that it's supported in the render time of my actual scene. So just don't forget to bake it once you get all the settings where you want it. In the meantime, just work on your fluid in the material view or rendered view if you can. And I think that's one of my biggest takeaways from this. This ultimate render that I do ends up being the dimensions for shorts, reels, and Instagram. I do plan on rendering it out more of the YouTube version. I just wanted to get this video out because I posted part 1 yesterday, and I hope that was helpful or interesting at the very least. And I think that's pretty much it. If you guys again are interested or have any questions, concerns, comments, feedback, definitely drop it down in the comments below. Right now the video is basically just I'm doing my last render. I bumped up that resolution right there. I'm just gonna let it run through render. You can see how cool it looks. I love fluid simulations. And then there'll be a final shot, and that is basically the render. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye.